All right, welcome to End Hype. I have a real treat for you today, so I'm really excited about this. I got my man Tony Whatley on here, so man of many talents. But before we hop into the show, just a little housekeeping. Look, Tony's going to drop some gems for sure. We're going to have a fun and we're going to have this great conversation, but share this out, right? Let's bring a little bit more people into the End Hype movement. Let's share the knowledge that we're going to learn today. Let's share this conversation. So if you get something out of it, just do me that favor, meet me halfway. So I appreciate it. Tony, what's up, my man?
What's going on, man? Good to catch up with you. Been enjoying watching your dog photos and videos.
Yeah, Butters is she's trying to be an internet celebrity.
Yeah, I think she's on her way, man. She's on her way.
Oh my God. But for the listeners that don't know who you are, where you're coming from, what's the story of Tony?
Oh my, that's a big story, I guess. So I'm going to start with my childhood. I'd say that my parents were both very disciplinarian in different ways. My mom was a educational disciplinarian. She's Japanese. I was actually born in Japan as well. My dad was a U.S. Marine vet, Vietnam combat vet, and he was the leadership and the physical type disciplinarian, being a sergeant in the military. And so I grew up with two, I wouldn't say strict, but just telling me what I needed to do and how I needed to achieve things. And to give you guys an example of the educational discipline I had, I didn't miss a single day of school from kindergarten through graduation. So unless I was dying, my ass was going to get on that bus. And really that kind of instilled within me, and I didn't even dislike it. I thought that it was okay. I mean, there was times I didn't want to go like any kid, but just having to show up every day became part of who I am. And even as an adult, I'm very disciplined today on just making sure I show up. And that's literally the brand I have is 365 driven, right? It's daily.
Right.
So, they were both really hardworking, blue collar parents. My mom worked in the public schools as a cafeteria worker. My dad, after he got out of the military, worked in the refineries here in Houston, so in construction. And I was the first one in my family on both sides to go to college and get a degree in engineering. And I just knew that if I wanted to achieve something in my life, I had to go figure that out. So they asked me when I was 18, "Hey, do you want to go to college?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they go, "Okay, get a job or join the military." And so I said, "Okay, well, I guess I'll join the military." And my dad's like, "Well, don't do that for just financial reasons, because you can always find a job to be able to pay for school." So that's what I did. I stayed here and I worked construction just like he did in the chemical plants. And I waited tables and I paid for my own school. And it took me 7 years to do that. It was probably the most stressful period of my life, to be honest. It was about 7 years of sleep deprivation, working full-time outdoor construction here in Houston. It's not necessarily the easiest weather to do so. And waiting tables Fridays, Saturdays, Sunday nights, and then also being a mechanic at a local performance shop on Saturday in the morning and working on cars. So I was working 3 jobs, going to school full time, and just broke and anxiety. I had a lot more gray hair actually back then, which was kind of weird. And it just, when I got out of school and I first got my engineering, first job, I think it was $45,000 a year is what I was earning. I felt like I was a big boy because I had a salary job finally after working hourly all those years for my life. And I was getting home at 4:30 in the afternoon. I felt like I was a part-time job. After going through the whole 7 years of doing what I did, I said, this is like a part-time job. So whenever I hear people bitching about their 40-hour work week, I'm like, you don't even know how easy you got it. Like, it literally is a part-time job when you think about it from an entrepreneur's perspective. So I tried wasting some time at the bars and doing stupid things like young men do for a little bit. And then I realized, like, this isn't going anywhere. I needed to do something more because I'm not where I want to be in my life. So for me, that meant just going and actually waiting tables again. So I was actually engineering degree, engineering salary. I'd get home at 4:30 and I'd put on my apron and I'd go back to the restaurant that I used to be a waiter and a manager at. And I would pick up shifts every night. And I did that. And people were like, "Man, you already got a job and you graduated college." And I was like, "I know, but I'm not where I want to be." So I guess I've never really had that embarrassment factor when it came to generating money or doing what it took. Cause I mean, even as a kid, I was mowing yards at age 12 and knocking on doors to wash cars, walk dogs, sweep driveways, rake leaves, whatever I could. And I remember my fellow neighborhood kids would, they would see me mowing somebody else's yard and they would laugh at me like, "When are you mowing this yard? Your house is way down there." And I just, I was like, "You guys can laugh, but I have a new skateboard. You
Yeah.
guys can laugh, but I got the new Nintendo game." And that's how I was able to pay for things, because my parents didn't give me any money. So they also supported anything I did to create money. So I had a good mutual beneficial thing going on with that. And that's who I've always been. I didn't think I was an entrepreneur really until I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars in my first business that I started in 2001. And even then, I would say that I built that up, made it where I was making a profit of multiple six figures, bringing about 400,000 a year. And we sold that for a couple million in 2007. And even then, I didn't really feel like I was a good entrepreneur. And even looking back now, because that was, over a decade ago, I I realized that I had a lot to learn, but I was doing a lot of things right in order to be able to achieve that. But I also didn't know a whole lot of things. I was just reading books. We didn't have YouTube or social media or podcasts or anything like that at the time. So I just read books and read magazines like Entrepreneur and Forbes and try to figure it all out myself, because nobody in my family was successful. And yeah, things worked out pretty well, man, for me.
You feel like that early work ethic gave you the energy and the gap to pursue those side hustles like that. You, you
I
feel
think for
like
me,
it
like,
just gave you because a lot of people, this is the thing, is they're like, dude, I'm working 40, 50 hours. Like, how am I going to start something else? How am I going to start a business? How am I going to start a side hustle? And a lot of your branding is around, side hustle millionaire and all that. And that's like the pushback that I see the most often with starting something. Maybe it's because they want to do something gigantic and it's like an obstacle in their mind, but it's like, uh, I don't know. Where did you find that energy? You think it's just from the discipline, or what's your perspective on that?
I think it's not having a tolerance for excuses. I think I may have probably learned that from a combination of my dad and my football coaches in high school. They didn't care if you didn't feel like doing things. You still had to perform. And watching my parents work exceptionally hard, whether they wanted to or not, kind of instilled into me that you don't have to want to do it. You don't need motivation to do something. You try to focus on the result. And literally every house I grew up in, the first three homes were all flip houses that we lived in. Like, my parents would go buy the crappiest house in the neighborhood just so we could get within a school system that was good enough for my sister and I, because again, she valued education. So we would buy the crappiest house. And by the time we lived in it a few years and restored it and made it look nice, it was actually one of the nicer looking houses in the neighborhood. So we did that actually three times. And my parents didn't actually start getting nicer homes like that didn't need a lot of work until I'd already moved out and was in college, like done, right?
Yeah.
So their first house that they ever bought that was brand new was probably when I was in my late 30s, so I kind of give you perspective of where they went. And when I hear people say that I don't have time, it's an excuse. I mean, let's call it what it is. It's an excuse. It's fucking excuse.
Yeah.
Because people tend to hang around with other people who aspire to be average or complacent in their lives. And when you hang around with a bunch of average people, you bounce back the same excuses back and forth to validate your lack of drive or lack of effort or lack of passion or lack of knowledge or understanding. But the thing is, like, if you and I were both aspiring to be average, and I know you're not that person, and I said, "Man, I'm busy," I would expect you to go, "Yeah, I'm busy." Whoa, lost a little signal there. So that's what it would happen, was they would just volley these excuses back and forth, and then you go, "Okay, cool." And for most people, the conversation stops when you drop that first excuse. But when you say that to me, I go, "Oh, you don't have time. Well, let me see your calendar."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" I was like, "Go pull out your phone or your planner or whatever you're using. Like, show me your calendar. I want to see what you're doing every day, every hour of the day." And then you can start to see the deer in the headlights look, because they realize, like, "Oh shit, I just gave an excuse to somebody that doesn't take excuses." Because to
Yeah.
me, like, if you say that you can't start business or go on a weight loss program because you got kids, that's an insult to the millions of people out there who have become successful with far more challenging things in their lives than having kids. and they've done it and they didn't have the excuses, right? And
Yep.
it's the same thing. If you say, well, I can't, Tony, I have a dream business, but I don't have money to start it. It's like, well, what kind of money do you need to go start something that can create the money to be able to build that next business that maybe you build up and sell, and then you build the next better business, and you just keep doing these things. Like a dream, I guess if someone was like, hey, Tony, what's your dream business? I would say, man, it'd be really cool to own a Ferrari dealership that was in the middle of a road course. That'd be my dream business. Like, I want to own this Ferrari dealership in the middle of a road course. And then me and my friends can just race around and enjoy the cars, and they could bring their cars and we could just have fun, and people would come in and buy cars. But I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars to be able to go build that dream business. So most people are like, yeah, I don't either. So I'm going to give up. It's just never meant to be. I don't have the cash to fund my dream. But what they don't realize is that, well, okay, go start a business that requires $100.
Yep.
And go build that up to a $10,000 exit and sell that to somebody else, and take that same money and roll it back into the next one and build something that makes you a couple $1,000,000, and then take that profit and then roll it into the next business or invest in the next ventures that are going to get you to the 10 million mark, and then just keep doing this.
I love that.
Entrepreneurs figure out a way to get to their dream. Most of these losers with excuses, if they realize that they can't achieve their dream at the first, step up to the plate and hit a grand slam, the first swing, then they quit. And it's unfortunate. I think there's just lack of belief in themselves, and also a lack of belief in their effort that's available to them. I mean, we all have the same 24 hours a day. Everybody with any kind of adversity you can imagine in your life has achieved far more than you without using those excuses.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people say those things and it's immediately demonstrably false, right? And what you're saying about business building is interesting, because I experienced that because I help people with products, right? So people have this wild idea. I call them shower thoughts. They can have some shower thought about it, oh, it would be super cool if this, and they go talk to their friends, and their friends are like, yeah, that would be super cool. And they realize, like, oh, to do the engineering alone, $250,000, like to tool up and manufacture this and get inventory, and it's $1 million plus to get this idea, and then the wind's knocked out of their sales immediately. They're like, oh, I guess this is too hard. I'm like, but dude, there's like a 14-year-old kid running $100,000 net business, private labeling products, and it's like, is that kid smarter than you? Well, I mean, demonstrably he is right now, at least in this domain. But I'm talking to people that are well experienced, well degreed, and they use that idea or that vision becomes like an obstacle. So we call it traction products, is to approach. It's like, let's get operational expertise, because your business is the same way. If you were 23 years old and you got that Ferrari dealership in the middle of a road course, you're like, okay, well, step one is I don't know how to drive this car. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So like, if I gave you a Ferrari business, or a Ferrari product, the equivalent of it, that people can't operationalize that opportunity anyways. They're like, how do I do all of these little elements? I'm like, that's why we start something that can become whatever you want. But yeah, that's awesome. I like the perspective of just doing that with whole businesses. It's like, why not do something and learn all those pieces? But you started a forum online and built a community around it. And, I've been following you for some time, because I got your book way back and then heard you speak. And I've just watched you on different platforms build different communities. And then I heard you on a podcast. I was like, oh, this guy has been building communities for a while. And that struck me as interesting. And it's no surprise that you've been successful on Clubhouse, because it's like just another platform for the same thing. Mm-hmm. Can you give us like some tips on what makes building a community work, or like what makes you successful at building communities? Like, it's a broad question, but I see.
No, it's true. There's definitely some strategies that are required to build a successful community. And for context, maybe you're not familiar with the LS1 Tech. I built the largest General Motors performance community on the internet, and it grew to over 300,000 registered members. And
Amazing.
we took that same business model, the same leadership, same core values, really the same model, and we rebranded another version of that for the truck market. And it's called performancetrucks.net. And we launched that because we had the same network of advertisers that were willing to spend money with us because we built a good business. And that one grew to over 280,000 registered members. So I was able to do it twice. And those are the ones that we sold for millions in 2007 with the final exit in 2009 after transition years. But how do we become the number one in those two different categories? Is because, for one, it was a side business. And people hear the money that was making, but realize that I didn't have to really be involved because my demanding career in oil and gas, I was project management, offshore construction. A lot of times I was gone for 28 days at a time. And sometimes I'm in a boat in the middle of the ocean and I don't have the internet hooked up very well. And I couldn't be present anywhere or anytime to run some of my online businesses. So being that project manager, the engineer type, I was able to create processes that I could teach other people to do for me in my absence. So as the company started making more money, I became really aware that I needed to fire myself as soon as possible from the company and just have some people that can be there. There were 75 people on staff, and half of them were volunteers because they were getting perks and free parts and sponsorships for their stuff for being a member of our community. And so I was funding their racing habits. I was helping them start their own businesses. I was doing all these different things, but I got to enjoy my website community after about 2 years in. I got to enjoy it as a consumer, which also gave me a better perspective on how to make it grow. Because when you're using your own community as a perspective of a user, now I get to see what's missing or who's being a jackass or where we can improve things or how we can speed up the performance and make it a better user interface. Maybe I could see the topics that were missing that we needed to discuss more. Maybe I could see the holes in the list of advertisers. We had over 150 advertising accounts. And actually, one of the businesses that I started was a glaring hole that was missing on my community. I created a vertical. I started selling wheels. There was nobody on my website selling wheels and tires for an automotive community. Imagine that. And
Wild.
I was building all these project cars for the magazines and putting fancy wheels and stuff on my cars. I built over 40 project cars, and people are always getting my advice on what's the fitment and like what wheels would you pick and where do you buy your wheels. And for a long time, probably about a year and a half, I was referring that business out to some shops that I knew. And then it kind of dawned on me. It's like, I have this captive audience. I mean, we had 100,000 unique visitors per day. That's a lot of people coming in the front door of a website.
Yeah.
And I was referring hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of revenue out the door that I was spending the time kind of being the salesperson for. And as I'm already answering these questions anyways, so that kind of popped up in my head. Okay, so what do I need to become a wheel dealership company? And all I did was call up the manufacturers and say, hey, how do I become a dealer? And some of them were like, hey, we'd love to have you right now because we know who you are. And some of them were like, you got to spend $20,000 on a buy-in, and then when you become a dealer, it's like, okay, cool. So $20,000, like HRE, big name, right? $20,000 buy-in at that time. I said, cool. I'll just go have a sale on my website, 10% off, do a group purchase. I think I came in with like $30,000 worth of sales, and I went back to HR and said, hey, here's $30,000 worth of orders. I'm a dealer now. So I already had the community. It was really easy for me to go do that, and I didn't have to spend any money. And I still own that business. It's called Deviate Motoring, and most people don't see or hear me talk about that very much nowadays because I've owned that business 15 years and it's a 7-figure business, but I scaled that down in 2015 to go do what I'm doing now because I don't have to waste any money on marketing. I got 88% of that business is now referral and repeat customers because car guys that spend money on expensive wheels only trust a very few people to be able to spend that kind of money because my average sales are about $6,000 a sale. So they're going to have to trust somebody that's been around and knows what fits their car and knows everything about their car. And they're happy doing that. So, and they refer their friends that also have a high net worth that can afford those kind of wheels. So I don't spend any money on ads, and I've got thousands of watermarked images out there with my website address on there. I knew this years ago. It's like, if I start watermarking every single thing that my customers send me, the Google is flooded with them. So anytime someone searches Ford's Line or HRE, they're going to see like watermarks from my company on the Google search. So my SEO like heavy deep on there without spending a dime.
Yeah.
But so community building to me was being a humble leader, being a servant leader, being accessible. I'm Tony, I'm a dude that they'll know who he owns. It's not about ego. I think a lot of times people want to start a company and they name it after themselves, or it's always about them. It's like, oh, I'm super awesome and I want a community and I'm going to build a community. And what they're really thinking, and it's screwed up, because what they're really chasing is the vanity metric, just like nowadays followers, right? Because when I was doing this, there was no such thing as followers. Like that wasn't even, there was no social media. Instagram came out in 2010. So we didn't have followers. Like, what does that even mean? Like, I was building communities. And even nowadays when someone's like, well, I got 100,000 followers, like, cool, I built 500,000. I had their email addresses and their names. Like, which is better? Like, I think I know which was better. So how do you do that is to get out of that follower mentality and thinking like, I'm super awesome and I'm going to build something. I'm going to be really loud. They're just going to start following and watching me. It's all about me. And you have this one way line of communication between you and your audience. Like you think it's all about you. And that's the wrong way to think about it, because a community, what you got to be focused on is trying to make each and every individual member of your community to become best friends. So in order to do that, you facilitate like group challenges, you do live events and get them off their keyboards and they come meet each other. And I used to do that with races. I knew that we had hot spots in the automotive industry in Los Angeles and Detroit and New Jersey and Houston and Tampa and all these different places where the car scene were. Well, I just had traveling racing events at all these different things, because I knew if I could get all these people off their keyboards, we could become friends beyond screen names. It's not like, hey, I'm Tony Camaro Z28. No, I know who you are, right? Or so I knew that I needed to become where they're going to become best friends and lifelong friends. And that's true. I've seen that for the last 20 years. So focus on building really strong bonds between your members, and then not make it about yourself. If you name something about yourself, that's actually going to be a limiting factor, because I wanted to build something much bigger than me. And if I would have named my communities like Tony's Garage, like that would have been about me. And I would have been the bottleneck of the growth of that thing. So I want to build things that are much bigger than me, like 365 Driven. I'm taking the same principles and leadership of community and applying to entrepreneurship. I'm going to grow this thing to millions of people because, one, I'm competitive and I want to beat my old record of 500,000. Like, I'm going to get to millions, and it's going to take time. I'm not in a hurry. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just keep pushing this thing, and I know it's going to happen. Maybe you and I have this conversation in 10 years and I'm like millions deep by then. It's like, that's going to happen. Like, you can guarantee it. But I'm comfortable being a leader and being accessible in that role where most people are not. They maybe don't feel like they can do it, or they feel like they're too small to do it. And guys, I'm just like a normal dude that just figured stuff out, and I went along the way and it grew that way. And I was able to replicate that. So I knew I didn't just catch lightning in the bottle and it was like a one strike type thing, but I know what it does, and I know what I see other people doing it wrong. And I'm okay with that, because if I see other people doing it wrong, that means it's a better opportunity for me.
Yeah. Well, I definitely see a lot of engagement. And when I'm talking to people about like their messaging and the way that they're communicating with customers or people in it, it's like, it's not only is it about them, but you have to make them feel like they're the hero in part of the story. Like they're they're on a journey. What they're doing is meaningful. It matters, and it matters to you. And you're like a facilitator and a connector.
Yes.
And so I'm like sitting back watching, and because I'm in 365 Driven, which is awesome. But I'm also looking at this because I was sitting in a pitch meeting with one of my clients. We were pitching getting venture capital. And I knew that she got it because the investor started imagining what it would, like all the work that they would do together. He kind of like sold himself into the future, which is great. It's like the ideal sales situation. But he said, "Oh, I really like what you're doing. You haven't created a brand, you've created a movement." And I could see your brand with like, "Oh, what's the hashtag of it? Oh, I think it should be this." I could see that on a t-shirt and I could see that on a hat. And it hit me really hard because for my business, my side business, Red Blue Collective, I was like, well, I just started using End Hype, but I was like, I'm not creating a movement. I'm just doing consulting. Right. So I was like, I need to figure this out. This needs to be more of something that I'm doing with people. Right. And there's just so much power there's so much power in shifting that perspective. So moving away from consulting into more coaching and mentorship and trying to, yeah. So it's like, instead of, selling people in, people
Oh yeah.
are, they're bought in. It builds a community around it. And it was just a big mental shift for me. So
That's another subject on one of the things I see people fail at when they're building a community. And it could be just based around maybe the listeners or the readers of your book or the audio podcast, like the audience, right?
Mhm.
One of the biggest rookie mistakes I see people do is they try to monetize their audience too soon. They haven't built up, like you said, a movement and have super fans and people that are supporting the cause and are the best recruiters you're going to have. If I join a new community and the owner is already trying to monetize me and sell me something or get me to join something, like it's a
Yeah.
turnoff. And
Yeah.
as people, we all can sense that turnoff. Like I need a free version to get access to what you're creating and see if that's for me, see if it resonates with me, and then have a low ticket offer, a medium ticket offer, and a high ticket offer, right? That's the
Yeah.
right way to do it. But even then, you shouldn't have those offers initially. I would say the first year, maybe even the first 2 years, I didn't charge anything the first 2 years I was building this when I already had thousands of members sign up for 365 Driven. The members of LS1 Tech, they never got charged a dime,
Right.
right? I knew that if I had enough eyeballs showing up on my website on a daily basis, it creates leverage and opportunities for me to monetize them through ads. So I made sure that I gave them the best user experience. Although they never paid me a dime, I treated them equally as the people paying me for the ads because they were two different audiences, but they were both customers. And if I degraded the user experience or reduced the value that those people were receiving on the free level, they wouldn't come back again. They would go hang out from 100 other websites that were trying to take us down, right?
Yep.
And so I served them. I always make sure the server speeds were up to date and I didn't like let it lag for a while and then start to upgrade. I was always staying ahead of it by monitoring things. And we always had giveaways and racing events, and we were really embedded in the industry. I had VIP credentials for all the media, press releases. I was at all the big shows, and I wrote articles for Chevrolet and had Pontiac and Cadillac as advertisers. So,
That's so cool.
so
Yeah.
when you think about that, it's like I can monetize them with the industry, and they're going to get all the value. And the representatives from the industry and the companies and the shops that they wanted to be a part of, they had direct access to the consumers through my website. See?
Yeah.
So it was the speed of everything. Like we basically, forums like mine, we kind of led the way on how to monetize things the right way. Because even at that time, there was a lot of forum owners that created the forums and treated it like a hobby. And they only got hobby results because they didn't treat it like a business. So you're hearing about me,
Wow.
like, I'm going to treat this like a legit business and do everything, make business decisions rather than emotional or personal decisions. Like one of the big ones that I did was, this was like a sacrifice in quality would have been if I would have installed Google ad links back when Google had like those hot link words automatically. You had to embed a code into your thing and it would find words and it would make them into links. Well, those are also super annoying for his user experience. And we already knew the math. We could do that Google Analytics back then. We could see that if we would have embedded that into our website, we would have made almost $200,000 profit per year just by putting those links in. And I started seeing these other forum owners selling out doing that.
Yeah.
But what happens is you degrade the user experience. And then some of these short-sighted people like, well, those people aren't paying us anyways. Like, I don't care what they think. We do need to make money. It's like, no, we're making 400,000 a year. I don't need another 200,000. Like, I'd rather make sure that they keep coming back and we're the number one. And everybody's trying to take us down. It's like, because we provide a better experience. See, so sometimes you got to make the right decisions versus the financial decisions. But that was actually the better business decision, because when we went to sell the site, they're like, hey, we like that you don't have all this crap on there and people are really loyal to your site, and all the other ones are like way far behind you. And I mean, guys, there was literally LS sites coming out every week trying to take us down, and they see what we're doing. Like, oh, that looks easy. We could do the same thing, but they couldn't,
Slap together a V bulletin page and start
always
blocking people. Yeah.
talking trash about our stuff on other sites. I mean, it's just, I've seen it, and going through that whole thing really toughened me up on not having to put up with people's crap. Right. And so people on social media that think they're keyboard warriors and trolls and stuff like that, I'm like, you don't even know what it was like in the forum days. It was 10 times worse than what we see on Facebook, and people are boohooing and crying on Facebook nowadays. It's like you guys would have been melted like a snow cone back
Yeah.
then.
Like I used to hang out on like Warrior Forum and a bunch of those like SEO and web forums. And it's like if you think if you think it's bad now, those were
Somebody was laughing. There was a post about that, and one of the things they posted made me laugh. It says, "These kids today would have never survived Call of Duty, lobbies back when everybody's cussing and yelling at each other."
Oh, that's so funny. But that monetization thing hits hard because you see that same pattern over and over again. I see it with people. I mean, we're on a podcast or on a show or whatever you want to call it, and people immediately go and say, "Oh, what affiliate offer can I drive to my audience?" And they're like, "Man, you got 100 downloads per episode. Like, don't drive some garbage affiliate offer. Like, you're immediately monetizing your audience, but also like, what's the quality of the offer that you're bringing, right? Or, hey, I want to bring on a guest. I want to on the biggest guest in the world. Like, I want this famous guest." And it's like, well, that's great, but like, is that what your audience wants?
Yeah.
Right. And since I'm a nerd, like I look at search returns and like what people ask. At the end, I ask everybody to DM me what your questions are, and then I look at who do I know that can answer that question.
Yeah.
But it's tempting to just say, oh, I can get this person on that's like massive, and I'm going to get a bunch of downloads. But then what happens to the people that actually like were watching it because they want to start a business, right?
And I'll tell you that it's the big names are fun to have on our show because it builds them into our network and we get to know them. And they get to know us a little bit. They start to be recognizable.
Yeah.
But the big names are not always going to be the most downloaded episodes. One is because they get interviewed a lot. So everybody's probably heard their interviews 5, 10 times by now. The other thing is they may not even share it or mention they've been on your show. And I'll tell you, outside of the celebrity or the well-known type guests, the ones that get the most downloads are simple. It's the people that can speak with emotion.
Oh,
like
wow.
people who have actually had speaker training, because our ears hear it, our awareness goes, man, this is a really good guest. This is a really good story. I like this episode. And then they share it organically because, hey, you guys got to hear this person's episode. It's really amazing. And now I look back over, I'm almost 200 episodes deep now. The people that were the relatively unknown ones that got the most spikes and downloads were the people that speak with emotion. So there's a tip for you guys. If you're out there wanting to be on podcasts, go invest in some speaker training, learn how to speak with emotion. Like I would say what I'm speaking right now is probably a 5 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10 in the emotion, because we haven't got to the emotional questions. See?
Well, everyone's so the search and the question that I get over and over and over again is around side hustles, and now people are asking about community. So I'm like, Tony's like the guy I gotta, he's the guy to ask, right? But I'll leave the tear jerking questions for somebody else. But I do get you. I could see that. I could see somebody that just delivers a great speech, and then somebody will also search them and say, oh, do they have a show? Do they have a YouTube channel? Do they have a podcast? That makes a lot of sense. It also makes a lot of sense what you're saying is if I have Arnold Schwarzenegger on, like that sounds fantastic, right? But now I'm competing against the other 30 million pieces of content that have him in it. So from a search engine return perspective, it's like it's not going to happen. So
that's right. Yeah, you're exactly right. Some of the most Google found episodes of mine are people who have become very successful in the last couple of years, but are relatively unknown on the podcast network. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting. Tony, what's a like a leaving tip that you can give us, or a piece of wisdom that you can give the audience?
Well, I would say that the most important thing that most people need to do is to try to assess who they're around, their friends, their family, and really just evaluate each and every one of those relationships and put them in two different categories. Because there's really only two categories. Do these people, as an individual, does this person bring you energy, or do they take your energy? Right. And the best way to describe that is when you see them or you react to them, or maybe you see them calling your phone and their names on the screen. Like, what's your initial reaction? Is it, hey, I can't wait to have this conversation, or is it like, oh fuck, what's now? What do I want? So that's a good indicator of energy versus bringing you versus taking energy. So you need to create more distance from the people that are taking your energy. And this could be in the form of people that pretend they're friends, try to get discounts and use you, or just want to use you for access and things like that. I mean, it's pretty, we have a really good awareness of that kind of stuff. But the problem is that we're fighting against millions of years of human evolution. And we'd rather maintain toxic relationships and bonds, even though they don't make any sense to us, because we're hardwired to believe that if we have a pack, people around us, we get the benefits of having that pack mentality, where we get the food, the shelter, the procreation, the protection, all these things from being in a pack of people, because we're pack animals. So we're literally fighting against millions of years of evolution of not wanting to sever any kind of relationships or toxics, even if it's hurting us on a normal basis today. So assess those people and create some distance, create some boundaries from the people that are taking your energy, and realize that some of them may be people you thought were friends, or people that your family, could be your parents, right? And until you do that, until you actually take the action to create those boundaries and that distance, you're going to just get what you deserve, and you're going to be struggling in that for nonstop, and people are going to get in your head, and it's going to keep you from doing what you really want to do in your life. And, there's naysayers, there's haters and critics out there, and anybody that's done anything worth noticing will have those. And if you don't have those, it means you're not making enough noise and you're not doing anything worth noticing. That's the truth. If you don't have any critics or haters or naysayers, it means you're obscure. It hurts to hear that. But when you do start to become known and you do start to make noise, I want you to understand that it's inevitable, and you will have these negative people that show up. But you can't waste a lot of time on those people. You got to be focused on the 95% of the people that support you or semi-support you. They're kind of on the fence. The critics, I would say it's about 5%, based just looking at the things I've done over 20 years. But a lot of times we focus too much of our energy and attention on that 5% of negatives. We're always trying to prove them why they need to like us, or, like, you don't need those people. Just understand that if you're afraid of getting on camera, you're afraid of creating social content, you're afraid of doing anything, starting a new business, going on a weight loss journey, like, you're always afraid not of the failure, you're really afraid of what people are going to say or think about your failure. And it's always going to be that 5% of those negative assholes that you are so worried about them saying or thinking. It's like, they're assholes anyways. Like, why? Like, the phrase that I like to say is like, why do you let these people who would not even attend your funeral dictate what you do during your life? The worst thing that you can do is show up on your deathbed at some hopefully ripe old age and look back and not have any regrets. And if you do have regrets, it's not going to be the things that you tried and failed. It's going to be the things you didn't do. And you go, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I do that? And then the next logical thing that you go into is they're going to be thinking, why didn't I do that? Oh, it's because John was always talking shit, and I was worried about what he was going to say. And Susie said this stuff, and I was always worried what she was going to say. And fuck, I'm here on my deathbed. I don't see John or Susie here supporting me. So why the fuck did they run my life the entire time doing that? So you got to get these people out of your head and give them less attention, and realize like they don't matter. They don't matter. The 95 percentile that out there, the audience that you're looking for, that you're going to impact with your product or your services or your knowledge or whatever you're bringing to the world, give those people all of your attention, all your love, and just say screw to the critics. So assess your energy, get rid of those negative people, create boundaries. I don't care how long you've known them. You got to take the action, because most people we hear like, oh, your circle matters and you become the average of the 5 people you hang around with. Yeah, it's all true. We all nod our heads like, yeah, that sounds great. But very few people have the courage to actually take that action and strike the name through that. So if you can do that and you find the courage, it's going to be a painful thing, because losing any relationship, good or bad, we still kind of go through a mourning period. Like, it's like someone died almost, because literally you're not talking to them, you're not hanging out with them anymore, and you're going to feel a little bit lost, and you're going to start thinking like, was I the asshole, or was it them? And you're going to have this trying to talk yourself out of it. Maybe I should give them another chance and stuff like that. But guys, when people show you who they truly are, just accept it and be grateful. If they show you they're a jerk, be grateful for that. Hey, man, I'm so glad that person showed me they're a jerk. Now I don't have to pay any attention to them. I can move on and go find some better humans to deal with. Or maybe they show they're exceptional. Like, hey, I'm gratitude for that too. So be grateful when people show you who they truly are. Look for the patterns and the way they behave and the results that they have in their life, or the lack of results they have in their life, and just quickly assess and move on. I mean, there's a lot better seas of people out there to go find. So hope that really helps somebody, because that's what holds most people up, is just worrying about critics, worrying about what somebody's going to say or think about them. Don't matter. It doesn't matter. You got to go chase your dreams, guys.
It's so powerful. And it goes back to saying, I don't have enough energy or time to start my side hustle, to start my business. And you assess who's around you and how you're spending your time. And you'll find out, yeah, you don't, because you're hanging around with negative losers instead of surrounding yourself by people that are already doing it. It's really hard to have excuses that I don't have the time when your whole circle of friends are already doing it too, and then can help you and can show you the way, and like that you have that supportive community that you've built. It kind of gets rid of the bullshit.
Yeah, what I say is, surround yourself with more people that say, or fewer people that say, remember when they're always talking about remember when they peaked in high school, they peaked in college, they peaked before they had kids. Before I had kids, I was doing all this. Like, cool. Like, so do kids make you unsuccessful? That's an excuse that you carry. You know, before I was married, I was this. Like, okay, so does your spouse make you unsuccessful? Like, that's a pretty lame excuse for your lack of effort and drive. And you should be improving over time, not getting degraded. So instead of saying, remember when, find the people that talk about imagine when. Imagine when we do this. Imagine when you launch this and the results you're going to have. Imagine how it's going to be in 5 years, 10 years, when all this stuff that you're building, it starts to show some fruit. And that's the kind of people you're around, because those are the people that'll hold you accountable. Because when you go, well, I don't have time, they go, oh, you don't have time. Let me see what you're working on. Let me show you my calendar. And they're like, oh shit, like this is what a real person's calendar looks like. So find those
blocks of meetings.
Yeah. If I were to screenshot my calendar right now, you'd be like, this dude's like doing all kinds of shit. Yeah. And most people are like, I don't have time.
I love it, man. Thanks for the fire. Tony, where's the best place that people can follow what you're up to right now?
My website's 365driven.com. And from there, you'll find my Entrepreneurship Society. You'll find all my social channels, my book, which is Side Hustle Millionaire. It's on Amazon. But yeah, 365driven.com. Keep it easy.
All right. Thanks, Tony. Hey, everybody, call to action time. Look, if you have a question that, if answered, would take your life, take your business to the next level, DM me, right? I'll bring on an expert to spit fire at you, just like Tony, and we'll grow together, right? Because that's how we're going to help each other end hype, end bullshit, actually do something, create our own life, all that good stuff. So my name is Callie Keene. This has been End Hype.